with thinking about how we can more quickly bring online housing in the state. And one of the things that I think was fundamental to doing that, as with anything else, is determining a plan. Let's do an accounting of all of our regions. Let's take a look statewide at what we need. And that's what we're able to unveil today. So this is the first time this kind of comprehensive statewide planning for housing has ever been done in Massachusetts history. And we're very, very serious about building more housing, and this kind of plan and report is absolutely central to us being able to build. We also made a lot of progress over the last 2 years on funding, on policy through the Affordable Homes Act, and much more. We had experts digging into the landscape and documenting needs around our state across all regions, and then setting out strategies to meet them, because every region in our state may be a little bit different in terms of their housing needs. I want to recognize all of these leaders for their hard work. On stage and in the audience is reflected a real cross-section of folks, including public, private, nonprofit, development, labor, finance, and so much more. Mayor Jared Nicholson of the great city of Lynn, Brian Shim from the Executive Office of Administration and Finance, Stephen Davis from the Davis Companies, Keith Ferry, Wayfinders, Rachel Heller from CHAPA, Amy Scheckman from Two Life Communities, Angie Liu, Asian Community Development Corporation, Madi Tere of the Mass Housing Investment Corporation, Justin Davidson, Mass Realtors, John Yozwinski, Father Bills in Mainspring, Renee Spencer, the Wellesley Housing Authority, Dave Kaufman, Mass Municipal Association, who's representing Adam Chapdelaine, who served on the council, and Brad Gordon from the Berkshire County Regional Housing Authority. And because of their work, we're able to announce today that for the first time, Massachusetts has a true statewide housing plan, a home for all. That's a great thing. We also have some council members who are not able to be here today. Worcester City Manager Eric Batista, Nicole Obie of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, Simone Crawford of the Mass Affordable Housing Alliance, Colin Gillick of the Disability Policy Consortium, Kenan Bigby of Trinity Financial, and we're also grateful to have Labor. As I mentioned, Labor's been right at the table for this, and today we have with us Joe Byrne of the North Atlantic States Carpenter Union. The reason I mention everybody is because this was a team effort. We're Team Massachusetts. We need everyone at the table coming together to help us get the very best out of our policy, out of our ideas, and out in terms of strategy. And they worked very hard, listening sessions around the state, a lot of analysis of data, and what they have delivered to me is a plan that gives us a statewide target of building 222,000 housing units by 2035. Building these housing units are going to help us bring down costs and keep our economy competitive. As I mentioned, this is the first in-depth study ever done of the needs across all regions of the state. And it not only documents the needs, it sets out the strategies to deliver actual production in those places for creating the homes that our nurses, teachers, firefighters, and communities depend on, for creating homes that seniors need so they can downsize and stay in the communities they love and near grandchildren, for creating homes that our graduates and our workers need so that our businesses can recruit and retain talent, and for creating the homes that we need to reduce homelessness in our state. A home for everyone is a blueprint. It's a blueprint for cutting costs, for creating new options and new opportunities, and it's a blueprint for ensuring growth and competitiveness in our economy. Because at the root of our challenge with the costs is a shortage of homes. And it's a shortage, as I say, that has built up over many years as our state was not building the housing that we needed to keep pace with our economic growth. We've said we're an administration that isn't about kicking the can down the road. We got after it. Everybody rolled up their sleeves to identify and size the scope of the problem and to set out a strategy for what we got to do to bring these homes online. I'm grateful to Secretary Augustus for his leadership. Under his leadership, in just the last 2 years, we've increased affordable housing by 50% in just 2 years alone. We expanded tax credits, which increased production of housing in gateway cities by 600%. 600% because of that tax package that we signed a year ago has brought housing online. We filed and passed the Affordable Homes Act, which has unlocked $5.2 billion in opportunity to build housing in this state. And I'm proud to announce that thanks to that law, last week we were able to make ADUs, accessory dwelling units, now legal throughout Massachusetts. Making ADUs available around the state, that alone is going to have the impact of unlocking 10,000 housing units. And ADUs, as we know, you can be more quickly bringing ADUs online. So we're really excited about that. We've created and built momentum for the MBTA communities law, and now 118 towns and cities have adopted new zoning, and said yes to more housing. We've also addressed the high costs faced by renters by proposing to end the practice of landlords passing on broker fees to new renters. And now, today, we have the state's first ever, most comprehensive plan for building housing around Massachusetts. In the weeks ahead, we're going to add to this plan with more detailed local analysis and strategies that communities can use in their own planning. And I'm really, really excited about this. We've got a historic challenge with housing in the state, and we've got historic strategies and solutions to addressing that. And really, the future of our state, the well-being of our residents, the well-being of our economy depends on us getting this done, on getting housing built out. So I look forward to working together more closely than ever, and I believe this plan gives us the common ground to go forward and do that work well. Thank you to everyone here and here who worked on delivering me this plan. I'd now like to turn it over to Secretary Augustus to say a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Healey. You continue to show real leadership by facing our housing crisis head on. And I also want to join you in thanking the members of our Housing Advisory Council who helped draft this plan. Their expertise and commitment were critical to bringing this report to fruition. A special thank you to Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, who chaired the council. We all know how passionate and engaged the Lieutenant Governor is in all things housing. And if I could, I'd like to just give a shout out to some of the staff at HLC who really put in untold hours to make this report happen, supporting the council's efforts. Gina McLaughlin, Tim Reardon, Josh Cuddy, and Ben Bryant, as well as many others on the team. The important work you have done here will positively impact the people of Massachusetts for generations to come. It's also important to recognize that more than 3,000 residents across the state participated either in one of our 14 regional listening sessions or engaged with our advisory council and our team. The housing crisis affects us all. If you've had to wait in an emergency room, welcome to the housing crisis. If you're a business owner struggling to hire new employees, welcome to the housing crisis. If your children or grandchildren are forced to move out of the state because they can't afford to own a home, welcome to the housing crisis. We heard from a young municipal employee born, raised, and now working for his hometown of Marblehead. He can't afford to rent a home, let alone purchase one. We heard from a housing case manager whose job it is to help people experiencing homelessness find housing. They pay nearly 60% of their monthly income on rent and live with the constant fear that they are one emergency away from becoming homeless themselves. At Greenfield Community College, a custodian that joined our stakeholder session, there talked about how his daughter just had her first child. He wants to stay in Greenfield to stay close to them, but the rental market is non-existent. These voices and many more have helped us shape this plan. This comprehensive roadmap is what you get when you bring people, everyone, to the table to tackle this crisis head on. It's a resource guide for policymakers, elected officials, civic leaders, community residents, and advocates. And it will inform our work and priorities at HLC. But it also places upon us responsibility to lead, to define statewide challenges and identify specific regional and demographic obstacles. Some of the strategies outlined here we've already put in place, but there are new doors for us to open. And shortly, we'll have the Commission on Unlocking Housing Production report that will make a host of additional proposals to further the goals in this report. Many of the Commission members are here joining us today. So we offer this report as a tool to be used in town meetings by planning boards and city councils. It offers local officials, advocates, and people who care about our state's future fact-based information to make fact-based decisions. Among other findings, our housing study found a growing number of residents facing unique challenges that make it harder for them to access conventional housing. Individuals struggling with homelessness, people grappling with substance abuse disorder, and those with disabilities or severe medical conditions. All of these folks need to be able to find housing. This plan is the beginning of what will be an ongoing process because the housing challenges we face evolve, and our solutions must evolve with it. This spring, we will be releasing the full plan online at mass.gov. A lot of detailed demographic information and backup that will further amplify the work in the report that you're receiving today. Together, we will move our communities out of a housing crisis and into a place where, once again, Massachusetts is a home for everyone. And with that, I want to introduce the CEO of Wayfinders, Keith Ferry, to say a few words.
Thank you, Secretary. I would like to express my gratitude to Governor Healey, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, and Secretary Augustus for your commitment to solving the housing challenges facing our Commonwealth. Not just addressing them, but solving them. I would also like to commend the team at the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for your stewardship of the housing planning process, and it was quite a process that benefited from the outstanding work of the UMass Donahue Institute, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and Dana Research. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to my colleagues, whom you see here, on the Housing Advisory Council. Being a member of the council was a rich and collaborative experience that enabled me and the plan to be informed by the knowledge and expertise of a diverse group of housing leaders. In each discussion, my perspective was broadened by my colleagues who represented the housing ecosystem, including private and nonprofit developers, municipal government leaders, planners, organized labor, housing advocates, senior housing experts, housing financiers, supportive housers, and more, with input from all corners of the Commonwealth. I think it's safe to say, to a person, we were engaged, thoughtful, and as already described, digging into the data. And there's lots of data that you'll see in the plan and what you'll see virtually. At the same time, we were considering the implications of that data for all 351 cities and towns in our state. The collective effort has resulted in the creation of a plan that clearly articulates the need, sets an achievable goal to pursue, and outlines a pathway to implement and create solutions that will enable the Commonwealth to compete and grow over the next 10 years. To that end, as already stated, we must produce and preserve 222,000 homes to create the housing choice and opportunity needed across our great state. And as the plan explains, when we are successful in this pursuit, we will have addressed the existing crisis, accommodated the unmet housing need, achieved a healthy vacancy rate, met the needs of our existing population, and set the stage for long-term economic growth. Sounds pretty good, right? The plan outlines many of the investments and policies advanced in the Affordable Homes Act as a part of the solution set needed to achieve our goal. It also indicates that the efforts currently underway are only a starting point in creating and preserving 222,000 homes. There is more that will be needed in public-private investment, policy and regulatory change at the state and local level, and in harnessing our collective will. In that regard, I see the plan as a call to action for all of us. And someone who I know will answer that call to action is up next. I want to introduce to you the Chief Executive Officer of the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, Rachel Heller.
Great. Thanks, Pete.
Good morning. Today marks a historic moment for Massachusetts, and that's saying a lot in a state filled with so much history and character and a sense of community. The state's first housing plan fits right into that history, putting Massachusetts on the path to a bright future where everyone can thrive. And this plan, like the housing production plans that our communities throughout the state do, documents housing needs across levels, age, ability, geography, and household composition. These needs were identified through academic research and by more than 3,000 people who participated in focus groups, listening sessions, and completed surveys. This plan names the strategies to create and preserve the wide range of homes that match people's wide range of needs. And when we plan for the future that we want to see, where people have homes that meet their needs, that's when we can put the policies and the practices and the programs in place that make 222,000 homes a reality. And when we have the homes we need, we all benefit. Like the governor was saying, grandparents can live near their grandchildren. People can live in the neighborhoods where they grew up or where they raised their families. Renters can become homeowners. Coffee shops have the employees and the customers they need. Our schools have teachers, and hospitals have the staffing that they need to keep us all safe and healthy. And when we plan for the future we want to see, we can preserve our precious open spaces, grow our economy, reduce homelessness, make it easier for people to get around without having to drive, and do so much more. It's an investment in every community in the state, and it really ensures that we leave no community behind. Now, we will not get to 222,000 homes without intention and without a plan. This plan, along with the implementation of the MBTA Communities Act, allowing accessory dwelling units in every community throughout the state, and implementing provisions of the Affordable Homes Act, including tools for homeownership, supportive housing, public housing, more accessible housing for people with disabilities, as well as more mixed income developments, all contribute to creating the 222,000 homes that we need while preserving the homes that we have today. Most importantly, this plan helps each of our communities to identify how we can each contribute to be part of addressing our housing challenges so that the Commonwealth has the healthy and vibrant future that we all want and we all deserve. I want to thank Governor Healey, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, Secretary Augustus, the amazing team at the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, the researchers who provide the data, and most importantly, and along with the Housing Advisory Council, I can't leave out my colleagues, but most importantly, the thousands of people who came out every time we asked them to share their stories, to share their experiences, and to tell us what was needed. So I'm so excited about this plan today. Like Keith was saying, this is really kind of our marching orders, our plan forward. And I now turn it back to Governor Healey.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. We very much appreciate it, and big shout out to the HLC team for all the work that went into this, Undersecretary Maddox. Also, our colleagues and teammates, Undersecretary Ashley Stolba from Economic Development. As I said, building housing, it's imperative to take care of what our residents need, what our families need, right? We're a great state. We want people to be able to be born here, grow up here, stay here, build families here, build careers here. We want our businesses also to thrive here in Massachusetts, and we've got to unlock more housing. It's a tough challenge, but I know we're up to it, and part of our ability to deliver is making sure that we actually have a plan, and that's what this represents. It's broken down specifically by region, so folks across Massachusetts, you can see what we've identified as needs in your area, and then also some of the strategies that we want to work on, and we want to work on in partnership with cities and towns. Thank you, Mayor LaChapelle, for making the trip. But also with communities, right? Each community is unique, but the bottom line is we've got to all work together. We can get to 220,000. We can get there. I know we can get there if we work together, bring that intentionality, and bring the energy and the teamwork to it. So thank you, everybody, for what you've delivered to us today. Really landmark day here in the Commonwealth to see this kind of plan come forward, and the LG and I very much look forward to working with everyone to get this implemented. at this time, are happy to take questions on topic.
Governor, obviously, we talked about the MBTA Communities Act. We know about some of the pushback in some communities. How do we win over those communities that a couple months ago were going to court over this?
Yeah, well, I'll let Secretary Augustus address this as well, but, you know, we've got to remember, the vast majority of communities have already approved the MBTA Communities Act. There's a lot of not just rezoning that's underway, but, you know, planning and engagement around this. We've seen excitement from the development community, and that's a really good thing. So it is the case that there are some communities that, you know, continue to resist this move. We've pledged to continue to work with them and to continue to be on the ground talking about why housing is so necessary. You need it. You need it for your economic growth and viability as a city, as a town. Everybody's got to do their part. There are a lot of different ways to get there. For example, I'm really excited about ADUs now coming online. That's going to be a game changer. But we continue to be out there in communities, you know, making the case about why it's so important to their residents, and so important to our state. Ed, do you want to say anything
Sure.
more?
Just to amplify the governor's comments, the law is already working. We have over 3,000 units already in the pipeline in MBTA-created zones, so we know this is going to make a difference. We do need every community to do their share to help us take some of the pressure off this housing crisis. And I think one of the goals of this report is to make sure that when a planning board, a town meeting is grappling with how to do the zoning for MBTA, or there's a project, maybe it's not an MBTA community, but they're looking at a housing project, and there's a lot of debate whether we should do this or not. There's information, there's facts, there's demographic trends that hopefully inform the debate so that we get a lot more light and maybe a little less heat in the housing debate, so that we're using facts and we're using objective information to make decisions that we need to make to take the pressure off this crisis.
Thanks, Ed.
Are you able to talk about the funding changes that we're potentially seeing out of Washington? I know this plan was in the works long before the current administration, but can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you're dealing with there and some of the projections, and including the migrant demand for housing, what's going on too in Washington?
Well, look, we've been focused on housing from day one. It's why we worked really hard with the legislature to get past the Affordable Homes Act. I'm really proud of our team's work. We went bold. We went really big on a piece of legislation that would give us the tools. Grateful to the legislature and Speaker Mariano and Senate President Spilka. Today we have with us here Representatives Kasner, Sylvia, Scarsdale, Moakley, Badger, Reed, among others. We're grateful for the ongoing support. So I think first order of business right now, and what I've said from the outset is, our job is to implement the legislation that we got passed. You know, implement that $5 billion bill, get the money out the door. In terms of what happens with Washington, one of the reasons I spoke strongly in opposition to tariffs, particularly against Canada and Mexico, is because a lot of our building supply material is coming, a lot of soft lumber coming from Canada, gypsum and other things coming from Mexico. The last thing we need in Massachusetts is to add to the cost of what it takes to build housing. So, you know, we'll see where that goes, but I continue to advocate strongly in opposition to tariffs. They're going to hurt residents, hurt businesses here in so many ways, and certainly could really hamper our ability to bring this housing online. The news we got last week with the freezing of federal funds is very concerning, because there are federal funds that come through the door here in Massachusetts that go out to a lot of not-for-profits, including ones that are focused on housing. And so I'm glad that the attorneys general went to court, stopped that, but that case is still in litigation. But, you know, for us, we know how important fundamental, access is to housing. And you know, we've got to build more housing. There's a housing crisis around the country, right? That's part of why we had the issue in Massachusetts with the right to shelter law, is we've got two things happening: failed immigration policies at the border and a national housing crisis leading to greater, numbers of housing insecurity. And so, we're going to be head down focused on implementing our plan. And I'll be prepared to take whatever action, we can take to address what happens on the federal level. Ed, do you want to say anything about that?
I think that's something we hear from folks who are developers and folks who are doing projects or anticipating projects. We know that cost went up after COVID. We know interest rates were high. Those were additional headwinds that building more housing quickly are. And the last thing we need to do is make it any worse by adding additional costs related to tariffs. So I think that's front of mind for a lot of developers.
And Secretary, is the plan where you put housing, is that going to take into account the traffic and stuff? I know obviously the MBTA is a common.
Yeah, we certainly are supportive of the notion of smart growth. Where we have transportation options and infrastructure, that advances our housing goals, it advances our climate goals, our transportation goals. It's smart policy when you really align all of your priorities in places that kind of advance them all.
Secretary, this plan focuses a lot on production. How do you balance production and preservation, and specifically preservation of affordable housing in a place where there's a lot of new growth?
Yeah. That's why I think job one for us was really looking at our public housing stock. Massachusetts is the only state to have 43,000 units of state-owned public housing. Much of that housing was built post-World War II for returning veterans, so it's 80 years old. It's in need of a lot of capital repairs. And the governor's priority was make sure we don't lose one unit of existing housing. That housing stock that houses 70,000 people in those 43,000 units is mostly folks under 30% of AMI. They're in 232 cities and towns in Massachusetts, so that is an important part of our safety net for folks with very low income. So the governor's Affordable Homes Act, supported by the legislature, triples the amount of capital investment in public housing to keep that online, make sure it's modernized, make sure it's healthy, and decarbonize it, and trying to provide some leadership from the state level.
Governor, the House has a version of your supplemental budget today for the emergency shelter system. It includes some of the reforms you proposed, but not all of them. Your reaction to that, and also are they moving fast enough? Our understanding is the system ran out of money last week.
I'm really grateful for the House's action on this. I haven't had a chance to review all of what came out yesterday, and now we'll move on to the Senate. I'm glad that the funding number is there. That's important, and I think many of the policy things that we had advanced, are reflected in what the House came out with. So we will continue to be in dialogue with our legislative partners on this, and look forward to getting a resolution there. I've said from the outset, we inherited this crisis, this emergency shelter crisis, and we have come forward with, I think, recommendations that make sense for the program, for what the program is supposed to be. We've started to see already, because of actions we've taken over the last year, numbers go down in terms of the number of families entering the system. I'll also note that the majority of the families entering emergency shelter in Massachusetts are not migrant families. They are Massachusetts families, which is also why we need to build more housing, whether it's rehabilitating existing public housing, whether it's renovating housing to make it more habitable, whether it's making use of state-owned land, which we've talked about, whether it's looking at old office buildings, old mills around our state, old properties that could be converted into housing, or whether it's building new housing. It's really an all-of-the-above approach to meet the needs of a variety of stakeholders, of residents, of constituents here in the state. Great. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. I have to take a look at it. I haven't had a chance to review yet. Thanks, everybody. What we're going to do is now you're going to come forward with. Okay, great. Okay, great. Great.